Hi, I have been counseling people since long, and what I noticed is a kind of favoritism of a different kind, and that is how much more we value the body than we do the mind. We value our body more than our mind. And there is an obvious gap between our physical and our psychological health. Now is the time that we make them more equal, more like twins, and fill the gap. Recently, I was at my cousin's place, and she has a 4.5-year-old son, and he was getting ready for the bed. He was standing on a stool by the sink, brushing his teeth, when he slipped and scratched his leg on the stool when he fell, and he started crying. But he got up, he got back on the stool, and reached out for a box of band-aid to put on his cut. Now, this kid could barely tie his shoelaces. But yes, he knows that he has to cover a cut so he doesn't become infected, or it doesn't pain, or it doesn't bleed. Or you have to take care of your teeth by brushing twice a day. We all know that. What I mean to say is that we all know how to maintain our physical health and how to practice dental hygiene. Don't we do that? We have known it since we were 5 years old. But what do we know about maintaining our psychological health? Well, almost nothing. Do we teach our children about emotional hygiene? Have we ever heard even about emotional hygiene? Nothing. How is it that we spend more time taking care of our teeth than we do with our minds? Why is that our physical health so more important to us than our psychological health? Do you realize that we sustain psychological injuries even more often than we do physical ones? There are injuries like failure or rejection or loneliness, and they can also get worse if we ignore them, and they can impact our lives in dramatic ways. And yet, even though there are scientifically proven techniques we could use to treat these kind of psychological injuries, but sadly we don't. It doesn't even occur to us that we should. Oh, you are feeling depressed, or just shake it off. People say like that. It's all in your head. Can you imagine saying that to somebody with broken leg? Oh, just walk it off. It's all in your leg. No. So it's so strange. For instance, loneliness creates deep psychological wound. This is my personal experience. One that distorts our perceptions and scrambles our thinking. It makes us believe that those around us care much less than they actually do. It makes us really afraid to reach out, because why set yourself up for rejection? So we are scared that we would be rejected, and heartache when your heart is already aching more than you can stand. But loneliness is defined purely subjectively. You can be lonely if you are even surrounded by people. It depends solely on whether you feel emotionally or socially disconnected from all those around you. And yes, there is a lot of research on loneliness, and all of it is horrifying. Loneliness won't just make you miserable, it can kill you. Chronic loneliness increases your likelihood of an early death by 14%. 14%. It may lead to high blood pressure, high cholesterol. It even suppresses the functioning of your immune system, making you vulnerable to all kinds of illnesses and diseases. Isn't that scary? Cigarette packs come with warnings saying this could kill you, but loneliness doesn't. And that's why it's so important that we prioritize our psychological health, that we practice emotional hygiene, because you can't treat a psychological wound if you don't even know you are injured. Sometimes we are not even aware of our injury. Loneliness isn't the only psychological wound that distorts our perceptions and misleads us. There are many such wounds. And another such wound can be there because of failure. Are you aware how your mind reacts to failure? We all have seen failures in our lives. So you need to be aware of it because of your mind tries to convince you you are incapable of something and you believe it. Then, like those two toddlers who will begin to feel helpless and you will stop trying too soon, or you won't even try at all. And then you will be even more convinced you can't succeed. This might be the reason that's why many people function below their actual potential. Sometimes even a single failure convinces people that they couldn't succeed and they believe it. Our mind is hard to change once we become convinced, and it is natural to feel demoralized and demotivated and defeated after we fail. But you have to fight feelings of hopelessness and helplessness. So try to gain control over the situation. And you have to break this kind of negative cycle before it begins. Otherwise, this wound would never heal. And another wound, rejection, comes next. I've seen people getting rejected in their relationships or when they get divorced or in their workplaces and getting demoralized. Rejection is extremely painful. People may even feel frozen when they are rejected. What do you expect? You have, like when you are rejected because of your body structure, because you have big hips, or you are obese, or you are not interesting, how would you feel? So we sometimes we all face rejection. What we wish we were, what we wish we weren't. We start calling ourselves names, maybe not as harshly, but we all do it. And it's interesting that we do because our self esteem is already hurting. Why would we want to go and damage it even further? We wouldn't make a physical injury worse on the purpose. You wouldn't get a cut on your arm and decide, oh, I know, it's going to take I'm going to take a knife and see how much deeper I can make it. Would you do that? But we do that with our psychological injuries all the time. Why? Because of our poor emotional hygiene. Because we don't prioritize our psychological health. When your self esteem is lower, you are more vulnerable to stress and anxiety. That failures and rejections hurt more, and it takes longer to recover from them. So when you get rejected, the first thing you should do is to revive your self esteem. When you are in emotional pain, treat yourself with the same compassion you would expect from a truly good friend. Catch your unhealthy psychological habits and change them. And one of the unhealthiest habit is rumination. To ruminate means to chew over. We start chewing over things, our thoughts. It's when your boss yells at you, or your professor makes you feel stupid in the class, or you have big fight with a friend or your spouse, and you just can't stop replaying the scene in your head for days, weeks, or months. Now, ruminating about upsetting events is very costly habit because by spending so much time focused on upsetting and negative thoughts, you are actually putting yourself at a significant risk for developing clinical depression, alcoholism, substance abuse, eating disorders, and even cardiovascular disease. So stop ruminating, change your habit. I know this for a fact because few years ago, when my father had Parkinson's, I couldn't stop thinking about what he was going through. I couldn't stop thinking about how much he was suffering, even though he never complained, not at once. He had an incredibly positive attitude. His psychological health was amazing. But psychologically, I was in a mess. Studies tell us that even 2 minutes distraction is sufficient to break the urge to ruminate in that moment. So each time I had a worrying, upsetting, or negative thought, I forced myself to concentrate on something else until the urge passed. You can also try doing that. And within 1 week and or few days, my outlook changed and I became positive and more hopeful. So by taking action when you are lonely, by changing your response to failure, by protecting your self-esteem, by battling negative thinking, you won't just heal your psychological wounds. You will build emotional resilience and you will thrive. 100 years ago, people began practicing personal hygiene and life expectancy rates rose by over 50% in just a matter of decades. I believe our quality of life could rise just as dramatically if we all begin practicing emotional hygiene. Can you imagine what the world would be like if everyone was psychologically healthier? If there were less loneliness and less depression? If people knew how to overcome failure? If they felt better about themselves and more empowered? If they were happier and more fulfilled? I can, because that's the world I want to live in. And that's the world we all want to live in. And if you just become informed and change a few of your habits, well, that's the world we all want to live in.